Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Team Asian Confluence extends a very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists and guests. Asian Confluence is a think tank institution headquartered in Shillong, Meghalaya, in Northeast India that works through research, training, advocacy, and exchange programs towards creating better understanding of the Eastern South Asian region in the larger framework of the Indo Pacific region as a confluence of ideas and geographies. Our vision is for a stable and prosperous Asia where ecology is honored, diversity is celebrated, prosperity is shared, sovereignty is respected, and boundaries become connectors. This is the first webinar of Series 2 of our Nadi Conversations on the topic Ganga the Perennial, will it be pristine again? The river Ganga has been the civilization lifeline for our country and entire South Asia. It is also a symbol of faith, hope, development, and connectivity, and it has served as a source of livelihood for millions since time immemorial. However, the rising levels of pollutions in the main water body and its consequent effects on the surrounding ecosystem, both terrestrial and aquatic, have been of major concern over decades. Through this webinar, which is divided into two parts scheduled over today and tomorrow, it would be our endeavor to look at programs dedicated to various viewpoints on the key question, will the Ganga be pristine again? And an opportunity to discuss the modifications that need to be considered for more positive outcomes. Our distinguished guests for this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, are Dr. Ritesh Kumar from Wetlands International, South Asia, and Professor Vinod Tare from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Dr. Kumar is the director of Wetlands International South Asia, a non-government organization working for sustaining and restoring wetlands, their resources, biodiversity in the region. Besides being closely associated with the Ramsar Convention processes, he has led an integrated management planning for several wetlands in this region and also an expert member of the convention's scientific and technical review panel. He has worked on various themes, including wetlands ecosystem services, disaster risk reduction, health, tourism, etc. Professor Vinod Tare teaches environmental engineering and management at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He was the leader of the consortium of the 7 IITs for the preparation of the Ganga River Basin Management Plan and the founder of the Center for Ganga Basin Management Studies at IIT Kanpur. The center acts in the capacity of a comprehensive think tank to the National Mission for Clean Ganga under the Ministry of Jal Shakti in its stated goals and objectives vis-à-vis the Ganga River Basin. He has authored many books, amongst which is the Compendium of Biodiversity in the Ganga River System. Our Executive Director, Mr. Sabyasachi Datta, would be joining us this afternoon as the moderator for this webinar. Thank you and welcome to all our panelists.
Thank you, Vatri, for that for the introduction, and a warm welcome to Dr. Tare, who will be joining us shortly, and Dr. Ritesh Kumar. First of all, a very happy New Year to you, Dr. Kumar, and thank you very much for taking your time. I have this unique privilege to start this series 2 of our Nadi Conversation series with 2 experts in the field. Dr. Tare is welcome, Dr. Tare. Thank you so much for joining us. We have and a happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Same to you.
And for our viewers, we have a real treat today because when we are talking about a question, will the Ganga be pristine again? It runs such a chord through millions and millions of people, not only in India but all the countries in the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin. It's closely related. We are all related as peoples and nations through this river system. And talking about the Ganga, uh, I think we have such a wonderful complementarity today because Dr. Tare is a stalwart. We all know you from your work on various works you have done, and also on mainly on the river itself. And Dr. Ritesh Kumar, who is working on the wetlands. Often, for the layman, the river and the wetland seem not too much of a connection, but the connection is so intricate. So, on that note, maybe I can start this conversation with Dr. Tare, who's already with us, to ask you, sir, can you share some initial viewpoints? We had the Namami Gange program. A lot has been written about it, talked about it. Recently, there were newspaper reports that post-COVID, during the lockdown, the water quality in upstream Har Ki Pauri was fit for drinking, which was a great plus point of encouragement for all of us. But as we run back to business as usual, is it business as usual? Where is the Namami Gange efforts? I may also enlighten our viewers that the Namami Gange has many wings: industrial effluent monitoring, river surface cleaning, afforestation, diversity conservation, public awareness. So, on that note, Dr. Tare, can you share your initial viewpoints? And then I'll ask Dr. Ritesh Kumar for the same.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. I prepared for a presentation, but I understand that this format is not.
It's a short presentation. We would like to.
Okay. Then I will also share the screen. But to first of all, at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity and for a very nice introduction, which I don't think I deserve it. But anyway, I thank you for that nice introduction. Starting from your question, can Ganga be pristine again? Okay. If you ask me this question and if I take it literally, the answer, in my opinion, is very simple and straightforward. The answer is no. We cannot expect Ganga to be pristine, right? But then the question is, do we want it and can we make it pristine? Is it at all possible? Because do we understand the meaning of the pristine first? Isn't it? So I think we need to modify this question slightly, okay? And ask this question, can Ganga be a living river? Okay, I think that is more appropriate question. And more than that, if you ask this question, can Ganga be a healthy river? Okay, I think that is more appropriate to ask question rather than expecting Ganga to be pristine. Because the moment human beings are part of the ecosystem, there is some kind of intervention and we cannot go back, okay, when the human beings were not there, right? So to expect that kind of condition of river Ganga, and also for us to understand what do we mean by pristine is something we have to appropriately ask this question. So I would like to ask the question, is Ganga living? Can Ganga be healthy? Okay, and as you rightly said, when you say Ganga is living, then we are looking at Ganga as a body. Okay, Ganga is a living entity. And as you said in the beginning, in the introduction, that when we say body of the river Ganga, it is the entire basin that we talk about, right? Entire catchment area. And it is in that context that the wetlands, and for that matter, all water bodies, including terrestrial environment, is part of the Ganga body, right? And if you ask me, is the Ganga living? I would still say, by and large, yes, Ganga is living. Okay, Ganga has not died. Okay, it is incorrect to say that Ganga is dying. Yes, there are some parts of the Ganga, some body parts of the Ganga which are suffering, no doubt about it. And that is why, if you ask me the next question which I raised, that is Ganga healthy? So I will definitely say Ganga is not healthy the way that is expected. Not all body parts of the Ganga river as a living system are healthy. And as you know, not many of the wetlands are very healthy. Many of the water bodies that are part of the Ganga basin are healthy. Many of the tributaries, including Yamuna, and many other tributaries that Ganga, which is again I would consider is part of the Ganga. Okay, they are definitely not living, and in some portion we do not even see any life there, right? But Ganga, if you look at the mainstem of Ganga, definitely Ganga by and large is living Ganga, right? Because you do see a lot of aquatic life. So to say that Ganga is not a living is, in my opinion, is not a correct thing. But yes, certainly we have to appreciate Ganga is not healthy, and there are certain portions of the Ganga body which need substantial improvement. Then the question is, can Ganga be ever healthy? Okay, I am sure we are all optimistic, and we have to look at it from that perspective. Yes, Ganga can certainly be healthy. Now the question is, what can make Ganga healthy, right? Now if you leave it to Ganga, okay, or any river for that matter, it can recover on its own. The nature has given enough ways and means for any river to recover. Then what makes it suffer? What makes it not so healthy? It is the human beings, okay, which intervene for their greediness, okay, for their greed, which makes any river for that matter unhealthy. So if you ask me what needs to be done, so basically what we need to do is we need to modify our own acts, right? Ganga, when we say we are cleaning Ganga, I think we are overstating that. Can we ever clean Ganga? Okay, and if you talked about Namami Gange program, what is in the Namami Gange program? I'll come to that. But basically, the actions that you pointed out, that industrial waste or this or that, by and large, pollution measures to some extent, right? So if you look at that, that is basically cleaning our own act, right? We keep on defecating, whether human beings or animals or industries or our businesses, right? Their effluents, basically they keep on defecating wherever they would like to, the way they would like to, okay? And this is what, if you want to control the pollution part of it, basically we have to make sure that the waste, our waste, unless until it is made fit to reach the river, they are at least made to that condition, only then we can say we are cleaning our act. Okay, so it is basically all efforts of the Namami Gange program are essentially focused towards cleaning the acts of human being, not really cleaning the Ganga. But if you keep on, if you clean your acts, and it is not just one time effort, you have to make sure that you continue to do so as long as you expect Ganga to be healthy. So it is not just one time measure that you have to take, that okay, I will install my STPs or ETPs or whatever, and then my job is done. No, the job is not done. Every day you defecate, and as long as you are living, and as long as you want Ganga to be living, you have to make sure that you continue to clean your acts. Okay. And when we talk about cleaning our acts, pollution is just one aspect of it, and that is why I would say yes, Namami Gange has done substantially, at least if not much, it has sensitized everybody. The whole issue has come in the discussion, and almost everyone out of the 130 billion people that we talk about, 130 crore people that we talk about, I think everyone knows about Ganga, everyone talks about Ganga, everyone is aware of the problems of the Ganga, and wants to make sure. So that has definitely happened, and that's a good sign, I would say. But if you expect Namami Gange, okay, or the government to do everything, I would say it is just a small fraction of what needs to be done. And to that extent, I would say we have lots of mile to run. Okay, we have not even started our journey probably on that direction. And as I said, pollution is just one aspect of the whole thing. Okay, there are many other aspects. The talking about the continuity of the river, talking about the flows in the river, talking about the obstructions for migration of the aquatic species, movement of the sediments, distribution of the sediments, and all those aspects. If you look at it, I think we have many more miles to run, and I think many of these aspects are not even, I would say, they're talked about, but not even touched in the present journey that we had so far on this. Okay, so we
On
will
that
definitely.
note, Mr. Tare, on that note, you've raised a very important point. I think that we have just viewed a few aspects of the river, but the fact that you said that about living and being healthy means there are parts, as you said, that there are dying parts of the river also, and unhealthiness is of course sure. And at this point, just as you have highlighted the role of the river itself, flows and the movement of the aquatic animals, and the corridors. I'd like to just bring in Dr. Ritesh Kumar here to ask you, where are we with the wetlands? Because as this, the way I see it, I just came out of a city. I will not name the city, but I was staying in a hotel which was actually built on a wetland under the Ramsar, notified under the Ramsar Convention. So as urbanization happens in the name of development, I think our wetlands are also in as much peril. And the same thing that Dr. Tare said about wetlands dying, are they going to be healthy again? Are the wetlands going to be livable, living ever? So on that note, can you share some initial remarks? And then I'll request you both to make your short presentations on the PPT, and then we can take it forward after that.
Thank you, Sabyasachi. Namaskar. Indeed, when we look at rivers or wetlands, these are not two disjointed entities. These are expressions of water. Rivers connect different parts of the system. Wetlands are where water slows down. And without without the connectors, without where water is slowed down, the river basin itself cannot be deemed to be healthy. We have talked a lot about how rivers behave, but the health of wetlands at the same time is no better than the health of the river. And it is no conjecture to say that if a river is in a poor health, so are the wetlands. We did a quick assessment of trends in wetlands area, and it frightens us to report that in the last 3 decades alone, we have lost nearly 30% of our natural wetlands. We do continue to maintain wetlands, but these are wetlands of different types. We are constructing more reservoirs, we are constructing more waterlogged areas, but these are no longer natural ecosystems. And when we lose ecosystems as wetlands, a river functions because of, yes, there are internal properties, ecological properties of the system, but the water in the river, the base flows, the nutrients, nutrient movement, the nutrients happen because of healthy ecosystems. Professor Tare rightly pointed out a catchment view of the system, whether it is terrestrial or aquatic. Remember, fishes, for example, they would live in the floodplain, and then they join the main river through flood pulses. So thereby, the health of these wetlands is equally an important question as we look at the health of the rivers. Fortunately, in the last, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, the significance that the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Jal Shakti has placed on wetlands environment has increased. We have the maximum concentration of wetlands of international importance in Ganga Basin now. UP alone in the last year has designated nearly 7 Ramsar sites, and there are 4 more notifications in progress. So the spirit of wetlands conservation is on a positive side. We now have functioning state wetland authorities in basin states, and wherein you have a good governance architecture, wherein river basin management, wherein wetlands conservation can convene. So although the storyline is not great, but I would also not hasten to point out that it is not great anywhere in the world. Wetlands are being lost. They are perhaps poorer cousins of water management. I often see the word water body, wetlands being used, and that is where the disjunct happens. Right. Wetlands is a generic ecological term. All water bodies are essentially wetlands. So we'll have to start using a common lexicon. We'll have to ensure that wetlands, when water is considered, wetlands are not left out as a poorer cousin of water management, but we look at wetland solutions. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I have seen some very positive movement, including some very positive exchanges I've had with C. Ganga and Professor Tare on this topic at different forums. So the opinion is building, but definitely, as Professor Tare said, there is quite some miles to be covered in this journey, and we will see how it progresses. Thank you, Sabasaj.
Thank you. Dr. Tare, maybe if you would like to make a short presentation on that you had in mind, and then that would be great at this point. We are not able to hear you, Dr. Tare.
Okay, are you able to hear now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So if I have the permission to share the screen,
yes.
I hope that I have, then I will share the screen.
Yeah. You
okay.
Can share.
So basically, what I would like to convey, that human beings are part of the river system, and we cannot just simply wish away presence of human beings in the as part of the river system. And so what we need to do is what best we can do, how we can make sure that our living being is synchronized with the living being or healthiness of the rivers. Okay. And we have to change our paradigm of this Namami Gange program, or the way we look at the river. And we need to ask this question: can river conservation and development go hand in hand? Okay. And this is what is the theme that we also had in the recently concluded India Water Impact Summit. Many of you may be aware of this. And yes, this was based on the concept, very important concept given by our Honorable Prime Minister in the first Ganga Council meeting, which was held last year in Kanpur. That is the concept of Earth Ganga. But I don't know whether we understand this concept of Earth Ganga very well. But in my opinion, Earth Ganga basically means conservation, river conservation, synchronized development, because we cannot wish away development. There will be our needs of all kinds, and we have to make sure that is synchronized. Whatever our needs are, the development that we have is synchronized with the river conservation efforts. And this is what Earth Ganga, in my opinion, means. And by and large, we had a consensus on this definition, that Earth Ganga does not mean extracting as much benefits to human beings as possible without looking at the river itself. And unfortunately, many of us in the other side take Earth Ganga as this meaning, that Earth Ganga means we will do more navigation, we will do more hydropower, we will exploit river more. No, that is not Earth Ganga. Earth has a multiple meaning. Earth is a Sanskrit word, and earth means first trying to understand the meaning of the rivers. Okay, and Ganga here, Ganga is the culture of Indian rivers. Ganga represents the culture of Indian rivers. So when we talk about Earth Ganga, it is basically we are talking about the meaning of the rivers to the human beings at large and to the system at large. And that is what the real spirit of the Earth Ganga is. Of course, the other meaning of the earth is also related to economics. But the real meaning, which is multifold, is the understanding the spirit of the river, understanding the meaning of the river, and so on and so forth. And that is where it is important to have this understanding embedded in our future programs. Okay, river conservation, synchronized development. Okay, and we need to propagate this concept and understand this very clearly, that how we can have the implementation strategy to implement this concept of what we call it as Earth Ganga. Okay, so right now what is happening is we see two sides kind of shouting at each other, if I can say so. And whom are they shouting at? They are shouting at essentially every one of us represented by the government of India, because this is why we elect the government, and so it is our government, and everybody is shouting at the government, you are not doing anything, you are not doing anything, and that essentially means we are not doing anything. Okay, and which are the two sides that I talk about? One side is the faith leaders, our civil society organizations. Okay, they talk on a long-term perspective. They talk with the traditional wisdom in their mind, traditional knowledge in their mind, and then they say river conservation is very, very important. The other side is represented by the industry, businesses, contractor groups, and they obviously rely on so-called modern science, and their vision is more short to medium, medium term, and they are looking at more at how can I feed my people, how can I give employment to my people, how can I increase my economy, enhance my economy, and so on and so forth. And apparently it appears that these two sides are shouting at each other, contrary to each other. At the same time, it also gives an opportunity for us. Can we convert this into a high speed vehicle? Okay, both the lions joining together and really serving as a high speed vehicle for us to go from here. And this is what we can call it as Earth Ganga concept. That is, river conservation and development are not seen as two opposing sides, but they are seen more as two sides of the same coin. River conservation is one face and development is another face. And we should stop arguing on whether we need development or we need river conservation. I think we need both, and we have to make sure that both are taken as the two sides of the same coin. And if we can propagate this concept more quickly, I think we can understand this better. Okay, it is also important to understand that in order to do this, we have to be more philosophical. Okay, we cannot ignore our traditional knowledge, the wisdom that has been given to us by our ancestor and has been quoted in many of our ancient literatures. Okay, yes, modern science is important, so we must apply modern science, use new concept, new solutions, new technologies, but with traditional wisdom. Okay, that is the most important part of it. We cannot ignore, and if we follow this philosophy, I think we will be in a position to implement the concept of Earth Ganga in its true spirit. Okay, and in that we will say that the Ganga River Basin Management Plan that was prepared by the consortium of 7 IITs, actually this concept is very much embedded, right? Ganga is our spirit, Ganga is our culture, and we look at Gita. In Gita, it's the Lord says, I am Jannavi, I am Ganga, and Ganga means representation of all rivers. So that's the kind of high spirit with which we have to work. So faith is very important. And why, in fact, if you have seen the way we fought with COVID, the way we have taken many of these aspects, I think it is our culture, it is our spirit, it is our faith which allows us to do many things which probably rest of the world does not appreciate that much. And this is where I say we have the biggest strength in our culture. Okay, we also have very simple ways and means of communicating this. Like, for example, we can talk about water quality, this and that, and number of parameters, and confuse people with the modern science terminologies. But this is a very simple illustration, and this again we have used in the Ganga Basin Management Plan, that these are the important qualities of river water, and we should respect that. Okay, and it is also told to us in our original literature that different rivers have different ecological settings, geomorphological settings, and they have to be treated in a different way. And what can be better than this particular slope to convey that? Okay, like this slope says, if you take bath in Saraswati for 3 days, if you take bath in Yamuna for 7 days, if you just take a deep in Ganga, or if you just salute Narmada, all your sins are washed away. Now, this has a much deeper meaning. Why? It doesn't mean that Narmada is considered to be superior because by only saluting you can get your sins clean. No. What it means is Narmada has a completely different setting. And if you do what you do with Yamuna or Ganga to Narmada, Narmada cannot survive. Okay. And so saluting Narmada is good enough. You don't have to go close to the Narmada. You don't have to take bath in Narmada. You don't have to take deep in Narmada, because it is not safe not only for the rivers, but it is also not safe for the human being. So if this kind of lessons are learned from our ancient literature, and we use that to combine with the modern science. And another, just one example I'll give you. We say Ganga, when we approach Ganga, there are 14 actions which are prohibited. I think if we can convey this itself in good spirit to all the people, all our problems will be solved. Like it says, these are the 14 actions which are, and this is what we are trying to do in Namami Gange. We are just concentrating on one aspect of it, that is pollution, and that I would say is just the first action of defecation. And remember, this also says it is prohibited, and we are not understanding the literal meaning of this prohibition. We say, okay, we can discharge treated wastewater, we can discharge partially treated, untreated, because we cannot do. So I think these are very, very important lessons, and if we can imbibe them, if we can include them in our future programs, that will be, and it's easier for us to communicate that to the people. And it is on that basis that we prepared this, what we call it as River Restoration and Conservation Manual, which I would request everyone to have a look at it. What it says is Ganga is a higher order river. If you want to look at Ganga, Ganga can clean itself, provided we make sure each and every small tributary or the river is treated. And when we talk about Ganga, Ganga is not just which originates from Gangotri. Ganga is also Alaknanda, Ganga is also Nannakini, Ganga is also Pindar, and so also the Ganga is also a Shipra which originates from the southwest corner of the basin. So Ganga has several origins, and each and every origin has to be respected. And that means each and every river has to be respected, and we should start our efforts from the lower order rivers. So if I can take care of the river which flows from my town, from my village, from where it originates, I think and when it's a river, river is not just river, because all these rivers are connected to the wetlands, all these rivers are connected to the other water bodies, and has been rightly said, what is our one of the problems, most important problem with respect to flows? The flows is we have very undistributed rainfall. Okay, all the rain comes to us in a very short time. How can we make sure that that rainfall or runoff is slowed down? And this is what the Dr. Ritesh also mentioned. We have to make sure that the flow is slowed down, and wetlands do a great job in doing that. They are the water reservoirs, not the water reservoirs that we build on the river by constructing dams. These are not, they can be a very small reservoir, but the bigger reservoirs are our wetlands, our groundwater, and we need to understand this. Okay, so if we can follow this concept, I think in the interest of time, I will stop at this point of time. If there are more questions, because I must give time to everyone to participate, and Dr. Ritesh also to add on this, and I can share this rest of the presentation to everyone. So I will stop at this point of time in the interest of time, and giving opportunity to the other panelists, as well as if there are any other people who are watching and want to make any point on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tare. I think that was an excellent setting the context why how we need to view this, because most of the discussions tend to be become very technical and very transactional. That we have to do the river because we need navigation, or we need this, or we need that, or riverfront development, or whatever it is. But the overall view and the quotes from our ancient scriptures, they are so telling. And I think it sets a wonderful context for to bring in Dr. Kumar at this point. Dr. Tare just mentioned about the river and the wetland, and how the wetland is the reservoir, the biggest reservoir. And I think if you can help us get deeper into this, and where are we with our wetlands?
Thank you, Sabsachi. I'll try sharing my screen now. Can you please confirm that you can see?
Yeah.
You are in the shawl.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So the fundamental thing is, whether it is rivers or wetlands, we are talking about water. And our primary understanding of water is, we normally talk about blue water, the runoff. And, the most, pressing approach of developing is to harness the runoff in different kind of structures. We miss ecosystems in this whole picture. Primarily, whenever rainfall strikes surface, it will create a wetland. It will create a runoff, which will subsequently accumulate into a wetland, will form base flow of rivers. And this interaction, the partitioning of water into blue and green water, is where different functions of ecosystems lie. The ability of ecosystems to supply water, purify water, protect floods, or control sediments, or erosion control. All of this, our basic training to look into water cycle is very limited. We forget that ecosystems are as essential a part of the water cycle, and the moment we embed these ecosystems, especially wetlands, into water cycle, you start getting the larger view of how these ecosystems behave. And we also know, and I'll be now taking a more broader sweep on different wetland systems in the country. In Northeast, where I've been working for the last 2 decades, give you an example of Loktak Lake, where we built a dam considering that the wetland can be used as a natural reservoir to take water out. The consequence was that the normal flushing pattern of the wetland changed, and it suddenly became clogged with all sorts of weeds. And in the last 10 years, we have spent more than 300 crores restoring this wetland. In Mahanadi River, we are so proud to have constructed Hirakud Dam. But today, as a consequence of, and I'm not speaking of water here, sediment trap that has happened, the delta has started shrinking. So there are long-term consequences when we try to alter natural regimes, and especially wetlands. And also to remember that rivers do not act in isolation of wetlands. And here I'll take you to Srinagar, the Jhelum River, which flows through Wular Lake. So this was an image of 1911 when you see lots of marshes, and in 2007 when I went there, all of these marshes had been constructed upon. The wetland had shrunk to over 50% of its area. When I was examining the hydrographs downstream the wetland, you will suddenly see lots of peaks. Now, the blue color, the volume of water changes marginally. This could also be on account of glaciers. But you see the sharper peaks. The ability of wetland to regulate floods and droughts diminishes. You mean if you remove wetlands from the landscape becomes more vulnerable to fluctuations in water. Now, how do we understand this connectivity then? One example, normally people see, okay, let's look at the river and let's look at the wetlands which are on the side of it. That is a very limited approach. You see the wetlands which are locked up in the headwaters, they provide the base flows. And when we come downstream, the same wetlands now become source of food. So different wetlands, dependent on their location, perform different functions. The connection, I was in Kerala, and suddenly, we spotted a wetland which had dried out. And people said, sir, mining is happening. So, that is why wetland has dried out. But when I looked into close detail, this is Kalata River, and this wetland is a Ramsar site. Mining had actually broken the impervious linkage. There was an impervious, layer which was connecting the water from the river to the wetland. And when it was mined out, it was but natural that river and wetlands got disconnected, and wetlands started drying out. So anything that we do in the basin will have consequence on its wetlands, and vice versa. But how do we understand flows is also very important, and I'll give you one example of one of the estuaries in Mahanadi, Chilka Lake. You have in black freshwater flows a salinity graph which is in blue dots. Now, obviously, when you have lots of flow pulses, the salinity declines, and when there is less of water, there is the salinity increases. But what does it do to the ecosystem? It gives cues. So fishes understand this salinity behavior, and they migrate because of this salinity cue. So a physical understanding of water movement in an ecosystem is a very limited view. When you start understanding these interactions, we get into larger ecosystem processes which are so closely related to fundamentals. But essentially, I see this as a problem of communications. Everybody understands water, but if you look to an ecologist, he will talk in terms of species. When you look to an engineer, they have a very hardcore language in terms of million cubic meters in the way flow is structured. We communicate water in different ways, and until and unless we get these diverse metrics and epistemologies on water connected, there is limited gain to be made here. Finally, we keep on talking about species. The way we measure species is also, at different scales. Need to look at ecology differently. When you look at, a small river, I would look at the number of species. But the moment I look at, different landscapes, it is more important to see ecological patterns and have relevant, measures for biodiversity that can work it down different scales. Now, what does this understanding mean in terms of Ganga? My first message that each and every wetland, wherever it is located in the basin, is important. When I'm now showing you a superimposed map of wetlands on the Ganga basin. On the top of our basin are the headwater wetlands. Now, these are the wetlands wherein the glacial melt are stored and gradually which oozes out and forms the base flow of the rivers. In the Tarai region, this is where the flood absorption happens and which creates massive, magnificent grasslands wherein the tiger and different species thrive. Coming down, these wetlands then form of the Gangetic, alluvium and the floodplains wherein agriculture, the fisheries, everything sustains. And then you go down to the coast, you get into a different character of wetlands, which then play an important role in buffering storms. So this interconnectivity of wetlands in the basin needs a more holistic view rather than seeing a wetland as a single entity. It is important to see the entire network of wetlands and its behavior towards river. So, in at close, there are three messages that I would like to give, and this comes from a wetland perspective, which would help the river. We have to understand ecosystem interactions and behavior of river flows and ecology as a basis of integrated management. We will have to recognize that different sciences communicate in different ways, and we'll have to spend considerable efforts in getting a zoologist and a botanist talking to river engineer and talking to traditional communities, all of which are trained in different ways. And finally, when we look at wetlands conservation, the most common response that I get is, okay, tell us how much water do you need, and we will plan that water allocation in our river basin planning. Nothing can be far from reality. We will have to start seeing nature based solutions. Suppose we are looking at a flood mitigation project, can we also look at the existing wetland regime and how much of flood attenuation can we get by restoring that regime before we take a decision to construct an embankment or or a wall on the river. So it is not just sufficient to allocate water for ecosystems. We have to recognize ecosystems as a part of solution, and through nature-based solutions, try to achieve development outcomes which are sustainable. So that was all, Sabyasachi, that I wanted to convey. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for helping us understand uh, these concepts. And I think uh, you raised a very important point about communication of the various silos and the various wordings and the various viewpoints and even the nomenclature of how things are addressed. Um, I'd want to go back to Dr. Tare now, and in fact to both of you. We have been hearing a mega project now in this country, such as Har Ghar Jal or the Jal Jeevan Mission. It has a lot of benefits for everybody. Also, we see a lot of efforts underway to revamp the agriculture sector. Now, if we go back to the view of the Ganga, let's say the Ganga basin is part of this. How do you see it all coming together in terms of the concept that Dr. Tare, you said, of Arth Ganga? Really understanding the interconnectedness, the meaning of it, and to understanding that meaning and then making real art, the wealth. uh, do you see that convergence happening, or what can be done to make it happen? Maybe.
So I think it is important that as Dr. Ritesh also mentioned, communication is a very very important aspect of it. And how do we communicate complicated concepts complex concepts are okay for you and me, who are science students or engineering students, so we can understand each other. But the question is, if you have to give importance to this, the masses at large have to understand, and they should tell to their elected representative that this is what we want. Okay, so that communication is very, very important, and this is where I will strongly advocate that we use our faith in the system as a big communication tool. Like, for example, he mentioned about wetlands, making that the flow is reduced, and then peaks are reduced, and so we can use that water. Now, if, in a simple way, if you look at our mythological stories, like when Ganga was to come on the surface, it was supposed to have so much of momentum, okay, that it would destroy everything. I think partly we are seeing this, right? That we are, and what was done? It was locked in the Shankar's Jata, right? Now, what are these Shankar's Jata? If you can explain to the people that the forest in the mountain is Shankar's Jata, the wetlands in the plains is Shankar's Jata. Okay, our wetlands across the basin is Shankar's Jata. Now, if you destroy them, then obviously the peaks are going to increase, and this is one of the symptoms that we see in this. So this communication, I think it is very important that we use our spiritual leaders, our faith leaders, our popular artists, communicate, those who can communicate well to the masses, that this is what river means. Because if you tell them big words of science and ecology, ordinary people will not understand. This is one thing. The second thing, the second biggest challenge that we have in this, so one is making sure that everybody understands, gives importance, and demands from our elected representative that this is what should be done, right? Then you mentioned about the other programs of the government of India, or Jal Jeevan Mission, or whatever. No doubt they are very important. Because we need to, as I said, development needs of the human being have to be taken care of, and this is one of the responsibility of the elected representatives, that is the government. So they have to provide. Now the question is, yes, there is enough to make sure that everybody's needs are satisfied, but then do we make people greedy? Okay, yeah, if people can are happy with their lifestyle of using only 20 liters or 30 liters of water, why do we want to tell them no, you must use 150 liters of water per day per person, right? I think this is something that we have to. And are we giving this kind of message by having this Jal Jeevan Mission, every house tap water? Okay, so this is going to be a big challenge. That am I trying to tell everybody that no, you must use more water, and more water means our consumption, our needs are very less, but more water you use, more waste you create, more nalis you create, more drains you create, okay, and more you exploit your natural resources, right? So this yes, it is important that we make sure that everybody. So again, communication is very important of this Jal Jeevan Mission or Swachh Bharat Mission or whatever, Make in India. They are all very important, and I think we have the probably Prime Minister. No better person can communicate this kind of complex system as simple as this. So we should take this as an opportunity, whether we call it as Atmanirbhar Bharat. What does Atmanirbhar Bharat mean? And he said, be vocal for local. What does it mean? Make sure that you satisfy your needs locally. Do not depend so much of transport. Do not import so many things from outside. And that creates much less pressure on energy requirement. And energy is one of the biggest sector. We all know how it creates problems for the ecosystem. So I think this we need to have. And the last point that I would like to make sure is, with all that, I understand, and Dr. Ritesh also understands ecosystem, but when we sit on the table, I consider him as a biologist, ecologist, and he considers me to be an engineer. He only talks about blue water. I think we have to get out of that and respect everyone, because every discipline is important. The question is, How do we, because if you have to implement this in a large scale, one person cannot become interdisciplinary, right? Everybody cannot, one person cannot understand everything, right? So we have to come together and understand each other and learn to work each other rather than blaming each other. And that is what, if you remember, I showed these two lions. Can we have these two lions side by side rather than roaring at each other and getting and move much faster? So in simple words, I have said that. But these are the real challenges. How do we make sure the interest of the various stakeholders, be it politicians, be it bureaucrats, be it academicians, coming from various sectors? Some are in government, some are in private, some are in NGOs. Okay, all these people are there. There are ecologists in NGOs, so also there are ecologists in government, so also there are ecologists in private sector, right? But the same ecologists talk in a different way because they represent different interest groups, right? So how do we make sure that we align these interest groups? Okay, and larger interest is taken care of, which is of course is challenging, and this is what I'm trying to communicate through the Sea Ganga and Ganga River Basin Management Plan, that we have to one person cannot be interdisciplinary. We have to bring multidisciplinary teams with each other. We cannot expect that Lord Ram or Krishna will be with us all the time. Okay, each one of us have to play a small tiny fraction of that and understand each other and work together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tari. I think you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, if there was, it really boils down to really putting all the heads together and communicating with each other. Dr. Kumar, any comments on further comments?
Now, I would tend to amplify what Professor Tare said. We'll have to recognize, Jal Jeevan Mission has a component on source sustainability. And I see this as an opportunity wherein, communities can be encouraged to look into conserving our natural water ecosystems as sources. Because in urban areas, the place where I live in Delhi, there are attempts to bring water to Delhi by, tapping waters in Himachal Pradesh. We have seen a lot of dialogue on interlinking of rivers, but today I live in Noida and my water comes from Ganga Basin. I get Ganga water. So at small scale, urban solutions of getting water from as far as possible and taking water out as quickly as possible, this mindset will have to go away to recognize the potential that we have in situ. And possibly, the water scarcity narrative is always shown as what is available per capita. If you convert this graph into how much rainfall do we have per capita in the basin, you will see how much wastage do we actually do and how much actually we can add to the landscape by bringing in conservation. But most important trade-off that we will have to recognize that in future, the goals of food security and goals of maintaining water for ecosystems are going to be a challenging trade-off. It is very nice that as a country with focus on vegetarianism, our water footprint is essentially much lower than our Western counterparts. Yet, this is something that needs to be on the horizon, and balancing water for food and for ecosystems is going to be one of the most tremendous challenges that the country is bound to face. However, I am much more confident that with transdisciplinary approaches, as is being advocated by Professor Tare and his center, there is still some light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks, Absaj.
Thank you. I must share 2 points. One is at Asian Confluence, we have termed a word called the third space. The third space is essentially a space of communication and ideation beyond the confines of the first two, which is a wholly government-driven approach, which normally facilitates discussions of this nature, or the business-driven approach, businesses, contractors, the commercially driven approach. They cannot exclude the government and the businesses, but it must, with inclusion, but have a different spirit of it. So we have something called the Nadi Initiative with our neighbors, and I must here say that we have several comments from our friends in Bangladesh who are watching this live right now. And there are many questions of how we are linked to each other at the level of wetlands, with our rivers, with our biodiversity, and how can we together grow as nations, nourishing each other. Dr. Tare, any any viewpoints to our audiences who are working beyond the boundaries of nation, because rivers do not follow boundaries. The water goes beyond boundaries. Anything you would like to share?
See, the two important points that we have to understand. So far as the nature is concerned, the nature respects and likes the natural boundaries that it has created, right? But human beings go by administrative boundaries. Okay, these two things is what we have to synchronize. Yes, for our actions, we will still have to work within the administrative boundaries, right? So my suggestion would be that we do the greater planning and knowledge creation respecting the natural boundaries, okay, and act, because this is our limitation. We cannot act according to nature, right? Okay, our ways of working are different. We have a different discipline, so we work under administrative thing. Bangladesh will be Bangladesh, Nepal will be Nepal, India will be India, right? I cannot imagine that all these three countries to be merged and have a one unifying thing, isn't it? That is something. So also we have number of states. Okay, Uttar Pradesh will be Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand will be Uttarakhand. If I say there should be only one government or one, it's not likely to work, isn't it? So we have our own jurisdictions, we have our own administrative. So what we need to learn is that we create our knowledge and information and planning considering natural boundaries, right? And take actions for ourselves through administrative boundaries, right? And the administrative boundaries, we must understand, they are for our convenience of working, and they are not for creating a hard boundary across each other, right? That this is my land, that is your land. What comes from your land is creating problem for me, or what you are doing in your land is creating problem for me. That's the typical upstream downstream kind of issues that we have. So the planning should be, and the knowledge creation. So again I say, water, irrigation, and many of these may be state subjects, right? Okay, but knowledge is not a state subject, right? Creation of knowledge is an international subject, right? Everyone has to have same kind of knowledge, right? So the knowledge is something that can unify us, right? But for actions, yes, we have to restrict ourselves, and that's convenient of working also through the administrative boundaries, right? So this is one big message that we have to understand, that our planning create knowledge creation. So we must share knowledge, we must share data, we must should not be feeling insecure that if I give my flow values, I will create a cross boundary problems. This is not only within the country, one country to other, but also within one state, and that is why we have not been able to resolve this. Andhra versus Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu, or this versus that states, isn't it? And we see different kinds of numbers coming up and never have an agreement, tribunal after tribunal, courts after courts, and never come to any conclusion. And all that is because of the knowledge. Okay, and that is why I said, and I always keep telling people, respect Saraswati, okay, and not Lakshmi that much. Okay, so our whole approach should be keeping Saraswati in mind, Vidya in mind, knowledge in mind, and Lakshmi should be used. Of course, is important. I'm not undermining the role of Lakshmi. It's very important, but it should not be purely Lakshmi based. Okay, it should be Saraswati based, and Lakshmi can be hand in hand with Saraswati. If you do that, I think many of our problems will solve, and we will be able to resolve the challenges.
Yes, thank you so much. I think you hit the core of the subject, which is knowledge creation, and we all need to work together for knowledge creation. In fact, such a forum as we are having this conversation, I think at Asian Confluence, this has been the objective, to create knowledge, from the experts, so that people can hear you coming together and talking about it. We are running out of time now, but I flagged a few questions on the net, on the screen. One is about IWT and the highway project, which is how is it going to basically affect the Ganga? And maybe the other question was, I think, which you have answered, is how can civil society be used to communicate complex topics and aid in conversations? Just some parting notes on from both of you on the planned IWT and the other connectivity, physical connectivity infrastructure that seemingly is eating away a lot. I mean, connectivity is important. It is the holy grail of development, seems like nowadays. But is it also affecting our waters, shared waters?
Well, I think this is where I said that we need to look at development and river conservation as two sides of the same coin. They are not opposing. And as long as whether it is inland water navigation, or whether it is energy, or whether it is urban or human settlement, or it is agriculture, all of them are needed. At the same time, when we talk about these sectors, if river conservation is kept as a focus, right? So why should we invest on river conservation? And this is what also, if I look at the Earth Ganga concept, okay, what returns we will get if you restore and conserve rivers, right? If you understand that properly, if you are able to communicate that properly, that these are not river conservation does not mean that you do nothing, you don't develop, okay, you don't aspire for new solutions, new technologies. That is not the thing. But the only thing is, you should have enough long-term perspective and precautionary principles applied. Then I don't see these two things are different. So inland water navigation, as long as we understand the sensitivities of the ecosystem, sensitivities of the wetlands or whatever, and then work within. And you will be glad that the recently concluded IWIS, we had each of these as theme. Okay, flood management, navigation versus river conservation, energy versus river conservation. And I'm glad people realize that, and they all kind of had a consensus that it is possible to have both sides working together. Only thing is, as I said, important point: data sharing, communication, proper planning, and then implementation. I did not have sufficient time to explain all the aspects of how we should do river basin management. We have given that in the river restoration and river conservation manual, and we should start working on local water bodies, local rivers. Then bigger rivers will automatically be taken care of. So each one of us has to be synthesized. Why not we have a river basin authority for a small river, right? And let that be and the Ganga Basin Authority can only be guiding using Saraswati as a main this thing, and not Lakshmi as their guiding or controlling, if I can say this thing. Okay, let Saraswati be their worshipping factor of river basin authorities at the higher level, and the Lakshmi, let it be taken care of at the local level, right? So Earth Ganga can be implemented for each and every river in that sense. So local economies, local stakeholders, let them plan, let them manage, let them come, and for guidance and knowledge, they can obviously look at the higher bodies where all knowledge can sit, data sharing can happen, and they can keep giving information to the bottom. So the education has to be bottom up, while the knowledge creation and other thing can be top down. Okay, that is the difference that we have to make. Yes, we need both bottom up approach as well as top down approach, right? So top down wisdom, knowledge, information has to come from the top, but execution and this thing has to start. So that knowledge has to get communicated. What is Earth Ganga? Prime Minister has elaborated it, but is it not our responsibility to take it to every individual, every local body, every town, every village, explain to him and involve him in that whole process of Earth Ganga?
Absolutely, you've summed it up so beautifully, that both the top down and bottom up need to work together. Dr. Kumar, any last bit of comments? I also raise a very small question, which is just like, at least we are talking about some river development authorities, but is there anything similar with respect to wetlands?
Okay, so yes, there are similar governance models for wetlands, and including one of the very successful governance models in Chilka Development Authority, which has demonstrated community-driven institution can be done. But I had two messages. One is, within Asia and within South Asia, there is a lot of potential to learn from how community-based management of ecosystems could be done. I was so impressed when I visited Tangwar Haur, or when I look at Godi wetlands in Nepal. I look into my floodplain systems in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. There is quite a bit of shared learning that can be done in the region, especially given the unique geographical setup that we share with our neighbors. Secondly, on the economics of the projects, we will have to start bundling economics of nature along with the more tangible economies of development that we have. And unless we start blending those two values, a comprehensive view of projects cannot be taken. And again, let us also remember that as southern societies, we express values differently, sometimes in money, sometimes in culture, sometimes in our traditions, taboos, and in different ways. There are diverse worldviews that we will need to recognize, and unfortunately any single cost benefit equation cannot capture it. So that is all that I would like to say, that we should appreciate that as South Asian societies, we are pretty rich in our interactions with nature, and we have a lot to share and learn beyond big numbers and metrics. And secondly, having a more comprehensive valuation approaches will definitely help taking a more balanced view of any development project. Thank you so much, Sapasad.
I think we've absolutely run out of time, but I profusely want to thank you both for coming. This was knowledge creation. And we'll do our bit to take it bottom up. And I think such conversations and such efforts, we would like to have both your involvements and guidance in the times to come. And on that note, thank you very much for taking your time from your precious schedules. And I hope that soon we can one day meet in person too. And thank you, Professor Tare. Thank you, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, and namaste to everyone, those who are watching.
Namaste. And thanks to our viewers. Thank you. Thank you very much.